Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. You know what's really important to me when I do business with a company is trust and transparency. I've been telling you now for a good while about my buddy Damon Burton and his company, SEO National, because trust and transparency are just as important to them. You know, for the last 15 years, in the search engine optimization space, they have been leading the way and serving people tremendously well. Now, for those of you that don't know what SEO is, it stands for search engine optimization. It helps you show up higher on Google searches so that folks that are looking for what you have find you quicker. And you know what's really encouraging? More revenue, more sales, growing your business. Do me a favor, get in touch with Damon and his team today at SEO National at 855-736-6285 or go to SEOnational.com and get your free quote and tell them you heard it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. I hope you're ready, because here comes a dynamite conversation on the Intentional Encourager podcast. And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you for joining us again today. I have a dynamic person on the Intentional Encourager podcast. He's a consultant. He's a mindset coach, a speaker. He helps entrepreneurs. If I could talk, we'd be okay. He helps entrepreneurs get unstuck and level up to a new impact. He's also the author of the book, Less is the New More. We're going to talk about that, tell you his powerful story. We're going to get into a lot of things. Buckle up, folks. I've got Chris Lee on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Chris, how you doing today?
I am great, Brian. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for that great intro. I hope I live up to it during this episode.
Well, listen, if you don't stumble over the word entrepreneur, if you don't stumble through and fumble through like I just did with that introduction, you'll be just fine. So don't worry about it. You know, it's all good. Hey, Chris, let's start here. And I've been starting here intentionally for the last almost 2 years now, because again, we're still in the midst of this pandemic, this whatever it is, and all this different variants. Take me through the last 20 months or so for you personally, professionally. How's that been for you? And is there a lesson that you have taken out of the last 20 months, almost 2 years now, that you will carry forward once this pandemic is over?
So yeah, a great topic, a topic that continues to be topical, unfortunately. So a couple of lessons in that. So when this started, around the beginning of it, I was planning on ramping up my speaking, taking my message on the road, little stages, getting involved in more conferences and things. And guess what? The pandemic hit and live events went to zero, right? So that was definitely a big impact. And, people did some virtuals, but it wasn't the same. And, people were getting fatigued by Zooms and all that. So that was quite a big shift for me and other people, in the business of what I do.
Yeah.
And so that was an impact for me. And so I had to decide to deal with it, to make some pivots, to kind of get out of my own head. And that's one of the things I did, was to not so much make the decision not to worry about the impact of me so much, but what was happening in the world around me and to other people.
Well, Chris,
and
you've got a picture behind you. If you're watching on YouTube, mm-hmm. I love what you said there, and I had to jump in because you've got a picture behind you that says "Mindset is everything."
Mm.
Mindset is everything. Yeah. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that. And if you're listening,
love that poster.
Yeah, mindset is, and that's a great thing. How were you able to adjust your mindset? Because you just mentioned you ramped up. You were 2020. You're just full speed ahead, and then all of a sudden you're ramping down.
Right.
Did your mindset? How did your mindset change? Because again, I know for me personally, I was a road warrior. I was gone, a couple nights a week, just focused on, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to do this, and then all of a sudden, my company sends out an email and says, hey, guess what? We're working from home for
Right.
there's no timetable. How did your mindset change? And was there something that happened in that mindset that surprised you? Because, and the reason I ask is Chris, is I think a lot of times there are thoughts that comes into our mind, and it kind of surprises us that thought creeps into our mind, whether it's positive or negative. There's a thought that creeps into our mind, and you go, where did that come from? Did you ever have those kind of moments where something crept into your mindset and kind of surprised you a little bit through that time?
Yeah, absolutely. And let me start by saying what I was seeing over time with other people, because as you know, it started out and we were going to flatten the curve, right? And it was going to be a couple weeks and maybe a couple months, and that deadline kept moving. And at first my thought was, well, I mean, you're at home watching Netflix. How bad is it really? Okay. But then so some people were impacted earlier, complaining. And
hey, we just binge watched Cobra Kai. So, I mean, we just binge watched the new season of Cobra Kai. So I totally get the Netflix thing.
Right. So I'm like, at first it's like, okay, I think we can manage this, right? But then I could see over time, I could see the impact on other people, the impact on the caregivers and the people that were, let's say, picking up the load for others who weren't working or needed, the care to take care of themselves. And I started to see how much it was really profoundly impacting normally, stoic and strong people, and the people who are used to take care of others. And so I wanted to make sure I supported those people as well, because a lot of times they're taken for granted and they seem strong, and you don't get that they're suffering on the inside. So that was an insight that I got. And to go back to your question, what was surprising? So I'm a practical person. My book is a lot about productivity and so forth, and I like getting things done and so forth. Mindset's a huge part of that now too. But I didn't set out to be as motivational as I've been in the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I love the title of your podcast, The Intentional Encourager. I was kind of an unintentional encourager in some ways. So I was helping people, get past their blocks and so forth. But I found out that so many people needed motivation, and I found out from them in ways where I was just kind of doing it. I'm like, okay, here's a post, some motivation. And then I would get like a private message that, thank you so much for that. I really needed that today. I'm like, oh, wow.
Doesn't that tend to happen?
I just thought it was.
Doesn't that happen though? When I love what you said there about being an unintentional encourager, because again, and I've told people this, Chris, is that yes, I believe encouragement does need to be intentional. But there are times when you can just put something out encouraging, and you don't know how people are going to take it. You don't know. Mm-hmm. You may be intending it for one set of people, and somebody else picks it up, just kind of like, okay, well, it just kind of came to me. You might have intended the message for somebody, but somebody else gets it. And I love what you said. Forgive me for jumping in. I love that, because whether it's intentional or whether it's unintentional, the fact that you chose to encourage people is just tremendous. And that's the goal, is choosing to encourage people. I want to jump back for a minute. When you were talking about the impact of people who carry the load, your book, and we'll dive more into your book, Less is the New More. But it seems like those people were taking on more and more and more and more and more. They weren't getting that break of less. Like, they weren't getting that break of less work, less responsibility. They were just continuing to take on more and more and more and more. When you think about how you were thinking about those people, what was the encouragement that you were intentional with in that moment? Because you're talking about the unintentional encouragement, and that's fantastic. But I got to believe that you were intentional as well too in trying to lift those people who seemed to be burdened down with that load they were carrying.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. So one of the things that I encourage is downtime in some way, some form. And even people that hear that and know it, they don't necessarily do that. And it's hard to do. I mean, you can say, yeah, take some time for yourself. And someone will say, well, I'm working all day. I've got kids. I'm taking care of everyone. I can't do it. It's like, well, you can't afford not to. And so I try to help people get that, they need to carve out some of that time, work with their people, their family, say, hey, please, I need some time. Give me this hour or whatever, and do some of the morning rituals, even if you have to wake up before other people, take some time for yourself and get your head in a good place because I know the load isn't going away. And some of the things that I, talk about in my book or my practices are harder to do in the pandemic. Okay, I get that. They still work and they still help, but they just got harder, especially for those people who are taking on the extra load that they don't normally have. So the other thing that I try to encourage my clients or people, and I know that you're a sports fan from your podcast, and I'll tell you up front, I'm not the biggest sports expert, but I do love watching football. And there's some good lessons to learn from that.
There you go.
Too.
Yeah. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Yeah, that's
all right.
Cool. So what? So I'd love. I'm as though I wasn't already all in. Now I'm even more focused because you're going to drop some football on us. That's awesome. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. So one of the lessons that you can easily get from football is stay in the game. Okay, and and you've seen this many times in football games where the score gets reversed in the last couple minutes or even in overtime. And it feels like, Tom Brady does that 5 times a season, right?
Yeah.
You think it's over with and they turn it around. So staying in the game, even when it's hard, is some encouragement and help that I intentionally give people. It's like, okay, I know it's rough. I'm not going to tell you it's not, but stay in the game, and also trust the process because, you can't, there's no guarantee that you'll win. But if you don't stay in the game and you drop out, you're guaranteed to miss out or to lose. Right.
Well, let's park there a second. Let's park there a second because as a Cincinnati Bengals fan, as we record this past Sunday, the Bengals were down 3 times in the game to Kansas City. They were and 3 of those times they were down by 14 points. They were down 14-0. They were down 21-7, and they were down 28-14. 3 times in that game, 2 touchdowns. They were behind. They come back and win the game 34-31. And the reason I say that is as a Bengals fan, Chris, there were times when that team, when they got down the first time by 14, they would have been buried. They would have been done. It would have been like, all right, let's find something else to watch or let's find something to do. And, maybe it's not their day, something like that. And I love what you said there. You said 2 things really, really powerful. Number one, when a team gets down, if they go, you know what, let's just go locker room. Let's just put the backups in. This is a really good team we're playing, and let's just pack it in. We don't want to get anybody hurt, things like that. And it's like, wait a minute, you still got 30 minutes of football left. There's a lot of time left in the game. And the second part is trusting the process, and it comes down to just make one play. If you can make one play, you make another play. You make another play. And you mentioned Tom Brady. He's got incredible confidence that he's never out of a game. So let me take you there for just a minute before we take a break. When you think about one instance, one play, and the confidence that you have to have in it, people that you work with and people that you coach, how do you get them to that mindset of just make one play, just make something happen positively? Because we know that the power of one thing happening can be a domino effect, and it can lead to several good things happening. How do you get folks to shift their mindset to just think about making one play, so to speak?
Yeah, and that's important at different levels. I'm a strong advocate of focus. I feel like you can do whatever you want, but you need laser focus along the way. So I teach that at multiple levels, whether that's your to-do list for this morning or your plan for the next, couple of months. And another version of what you said is kind of the 2-minute rule. I forget who came up with that, but and maybe it came from Atomic Habits. But it's okay. Just you're not feeling it all. Okay, and you're going to have those days. You're going to have a lot of those days, right? But if you just decide, just make a commitment to yourself. I mean, that's what I like to teach people. Make a commitment to yourself that you'll just do it for 2 minutes, or that you'll do something. And so, if you can do that, then to go back to your analogy, that 2 minutes could lead to a whole hour of creative writing or whatever you're trying to do. But just don't make that big decision. Don't look too far ahead of you and get overwhelmed by everything that you need to do. Start with that small action or that one play that you're talking about, because everything could change from there. And also, don't look back so much.
Yeah.
Which is easy to say and hard to do, but understand in life and in football, okay, this happened, it was a turnover or whatever, but that's done. What are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Keep looking forward, because when you get your head on back there, you're not here. Where's where you need to be, and you don't want to be looking too far ahead. You need to be mindful, get your head in the game of life or football, like right now, where it is. And that's what's important.
Man, I love that. Getting your head in the game. Because, there are a lot of times where guys will, I made a bad pass. I dropped one. And you have to, that's what quarterbacks have to do. They have to have amnesia. They have to forget it. It's a next play mentality. Let's step aside, take a break, because when we come back, I want to park on that concept that you just talked about, the 2-minute rule. And there's obviously applications in football and things like that. I also, in this next segment, want to dive into Chris's book, Less is the New More. I want to talk about that a little bit. And then later on, I'm going to share Chris's powerful story with you, but I'm going to let him share it with you. My guest is mindset coach, speaker, author, Chris Lee, joining me here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Come back in just a moment. Hey everybody, Brian Sexton here. The new year is upon us, and you may be sitting there thinking, hey, I would really love to pay off some debt, or I would like to save for that dream vacation. Maybe you want to buy a new car. Whatever it is you want to do financially in the coming year, let me give you a great piece of intentional encouragement and something to think about that might help you do it. Products for Profit. Now, this is a course taught by my good friend Joe Hart, who's been a guest on the Intentional Encourager podcast and has told his story how reselling changed his life. And you know what, folks? It could do the same thing for you too. It's really simple. Reselling is basically buying a product and then reselling it online for more money. And Joe is going to take you through the steps and show you how to do this either part-time or maybe, as some of his students have done, take this full-time as well. Go to coachjoe89.gumroad.com/L/premium PFP. And oh, by the way, this group is going to help you find leads of products that are profitable right now, give you all kinds of great intentional encouragement, and you're going to be surrounded by a community of people that are going to want to see you be successful in the reselling game. Again, go to coachjoe89.gumroad.com/L/premium PFP and tell him you heard about it on the Intentional Encourager podcast. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Chris, before the break, we were talking about the 2-minute rule. And when you were talking about that, and we were talking a little football, at the end of a half, there's the 2-minute warning in professional football. And if a team has the ball in those 2 minutes, and no matter where they are in the field, they're running what they call a 2-minute offense because they know it's time to get something done. And a 2-minute offense is quick plays. It's up tempo. It is, they're not, to John Wooden's point. John Wooden used to say, "Be quick but don't hurry." The legendary UCLA coach, "Be quick but don't hurry." But in the 2-minute drill, you call that the hurry up offense. Now you want to make sure you get lined up, you want to get set, you want to avoid mistakes, but you've got to go faster. There's a sense of urgency. When you apply, when your clients and people you coach apply that 2-minute drill, how important is the sense of urgency in that 2-minute rule?
It's part of it too. So it's a very great analogy, and we've seen what can happen in those 2 minutes. As a Cowboy fan, I've seen unfortunately how it can go wrong. Sometimes 2 minutes before the half or the end of the game. So it takes a special kind of patience to be a Cowboys fan sometimes. But two aspects of what you said. So in that 2 minutes, the one is to just get started and do something, and the other is an aspect of what I call time blocking. And there's a principle called the Parkinson's law, where the amount of time it takes to do something will fill in the space that you allow it. So this is an example of how that can work, right? So if you say, I'm going to do something in 2 minutes, then you focus your intention on trying to get something done in that time. Mm-hmm. And this happens whether it's on a daily level or weekly or a whole year, right? I mean, you may take a project and you end up doing it in the last minute. You do that report in the last minute, you do that paper in the last minute, whatever, right? If you just say, okay, I'm only going to give myself this much time and time box it, then you encourage yourself to get in the flow, to be focused, to make decisions quickly, and stop second guessing and getting distracted and things like that. So it's a great question that really does, bring in a lot of aspects of why that small increment of time can be so powerful.
You know what I was thinking when you were talking about that, Chris, is that in a 2-minute drill, you're going to have times where things are not perfect. You're going to have a penalty. You're going to have a drop pass. You may start the 2-minute drill, and you get a holding penalty. Now it's 1st and 20 instead of 1st and 10. And it's how you overcome those mistakes to say, we're going to get something out of this 2 minutes. Whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, we want to get something out of this. And overcoming some of those negative things, because to your point about time blocking and focus, there are things that will happen. You'll make mistakes in that time block. You won't be as sharp as you want to be in that time block. But it's not what happens in that 2 minutes. It's the end result, right? It's did we succeed in doing what we said we were going to do? And if we didn't succeed, can we go back and watch the film after the fact and say, where did we miss it? How can we get better? I've got one more question here that I want to take our conversation. Then I want to talk about your book. When you think about folks that have that ability to compartmentalize and say, okay, I'm going to time block, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. What's the one thing that gets in the way that's preventable? So in other words, we line up, if we go out to try to hurry up, we can lose. But in those times, there's something that's preventable. What usually is the one thing that's preventable in time blocking in the 2-minute rule?
I would say that overcomplicating it is the thing that's solvable, and an example of how you get in your own way. And so just be content with the fact that you can get something done. Don't worry about if it's the best thing. And to your point, you can always, if it's football or something like, or even business, you can analyze it later, okay? Go back and look at it absolutely and learn from it. But take actions and make the decisions. Don't worry about if they're the best decisions. It actually will be the best decision you can make in the time. So trust that what got you there is good enough in the moment to make the best decision you can at the time, to take an action that you can. You're better off making a decision than sitting there making no decision. And why does that happen? So a couple of things. One is you overcomplicate whatever it is. You can overcomplicate a to-do list and make your life harder. And you're better off doing one thing. There are people people I love and study that are really good at simplifying things. And like Gary Keller of Keller Williams, he has a whole book and system called The One Thing, right? So if you can pick the one thing to do that morning or that week or whatever, you are so much better off, and it works out in the end so much more powerfully because you simplified it. You don't have to make more decisions and so forth and get in your own way. And that is kind of a second or third thing, lost where I am, but that is another part of it too, is being in your own head. So many things that I try to advocate or encourage or help with is to get out of your head, at least at the time you're trying to do something. There's time for reflection later, but when you're there, you need to be in the flow. And whether it's, there's a variety of things you get into, whether it's shiny object or imposter syndrome or things like that. The solution is to get out of your head and into something else. And one of the most powerful ways to get out of your own head is think about who you're serving and how. Because when you make it about how you're trying to serve and who you're trying to serve, you get out of your own head so quickly. And that the same thing happens with gratitude exercises, right? But getting out of your own head and focusing on someone else, and it goes back to those like caregivers. So if you're an intentional person, not to overuse the word, but if you're somebody who cares about what you're doing, cares about serving, cares about other people, then you are going to commit to helping them, and you will help them or commit to helping them more than you might commit to helping yourself. Okay, so if you can, whether it's in a small moment or in a big way of a project, is think about how you can serve the best or most powerfully, whether it's 2 minutes or an event or whatever, and you can more quickly get out of your head and think about, okay, how am I gonna serve best?
Well, here's the thing and it's a great transition to talking about your book, because a lot of people, when they make a to-do list, will say, I'm going to write down as many things as I have to get done, right? And they just keep adding more and more and more and more and more and more. And because if you stop and think about it, everything that you need to do in a day is probably not physically possible to accomplish in a day. Whether that's personally, whether that's professionally, things like that. So let's go here for a minute. How do you get people to think about lessening a to-do list rather than putting more things? Because that's the natural inclination, right, Chris, is to put more things on the to-do list, so that and probably if you've learned, I came to doing to-do lists later in life. My wife, from the time we've been married 25 years, she's always been that to-do list girl. I had to grow into that. I had to grow into I'm not as productive as I want to be, and so how can I do this? But I always my own flaw in that was feeling like I had to add more. Forgive me for that long-winded question, but how do you get people to think about less is the new more, to the title of your book?
Yeah, and the title of my book, and I truly believe in it, or the premise of it, and I've gotten more, still getting more confirmation of that, is that not only by doing less can you have a better quality of life, you can actually get more done of what really matters. And so one of the ways you have to do that is to focus and do things that really matter. And so I mentioned the time blocking before. That's part of the solution, because you learn to do things like, okay, I'm going to commit to working on something important for the first hour of my day, preferably, or before the noise comes. And then I'll trust that that's enough, and then I'll go on and do the multitasking, because multitasking is kind of evil. I preach that, a lot of studies have shown that it's not too productive, but you got to do it. Okay, I get that. But try to get your focus work done, let's say early, and then you have time for the multitasking, and then carve out time for your relationships and whatever else, right? Yeah. And so you have to trust that, okay, if I keep doing that, then the time I spend in that hour or two of creative work is enough, and over time I will get there. Okay. But the reality is, and if you think about if you've heard of the like urgent versus important matrix, right? We tend to do a lot of things that are urgent, but not terribly important, especially to your goals in the long term. So, we talk about like how much time you spend answering emails or doing stuff because people interrupt you and all of that.
Well, yeah,
right?
Chris, just because something is important to someone else. And I love what you said there about urgent versus important, because there are a lot of times, and I will say that, and again, I'm not picking on my precious wife, but there are a lot of times that I'll say, what's urgent to you is not necessarily urgent to me. I appreciate the fact that you feel like that it needs to be done, but in the moment, where are we? Because here's the thing that happens a lot of times, Chris, and forgive me for interrupting, but you said something really that just dinged in my brain. A lot of times people merge urgency and importance, because when
Absolutely.
they send that email, when they make that phone call, or you get the text message, I need you to call me back right now. Then what they have said is, here's what they've really said. What's on my mind is more important than what you're doing in the moment. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be very honest. And again, I'd love some feedback or pushback if that's not but that's what I hear when somebody calls me and I'm in the middle of something and they're like, I need you to call me back, or I need you to do this or that. What you're really saying to me is, I don't care what you're doing at the moment that seems to be important to you. What I need to talk to you about is more important. It trumps everything. And so I think a lot of people, what happens, Chris, is I think a lot of people just go, okay, how do I continue to do what's important to me while still respecting the other person's internal sense of urgency? I hope I framed that topic correctly. I want you to go there for a couple of minutes and kind of talk about that.
You absolutely have, and they aren't necessarily like badly, they may be well intentioned, or they're under their own deadlines and things, right? And you can't just worry about yourself and say, no, I'm taking care of myself. I'm not going to worry about your needs. Yeah. But you do. Yeah. So, but I mean, that's exactly what they're doing, is taking your time that you cannot spend it doing the things that matter to you. So you need to try and, so first of all, some people actually train themselves out of it too. So they're part of the problem, because they're not pushing back. They're going to jump right away, or they're going to sit there watching their email, or now it's messaging, whether it's, Teams or things like that, right? So you can get, maybe not the phone calls much anymore, but you can have that person trying to contact you, and they're sending you the email, and they're not waiting. They immediately send a message, and then they're calling you, right? And so you're going to have to probably train them or untrain them from doing that. And so we talk about like setting boundaries, and you can do it. It may take some time, and you do it in gentle ways, but it usually, you have to think about it that way and say, okay, please, understand I can't work this way. I want to take care of your needs as well, or help you out, but I can't do it either between these hours, or please understand I'm not saying no, but I'm saying no to you right now. Hopefully you have to get out of having that conversation, because even any interruption is a distraction. Yeah. But get them to set the boundaries and say, hey, send me the email, trust that I will get to it in time. And then also trust that maybe if it really is urgent, they will actually pick up the phone and call you when it's important. Okay. So then they can get hold of you in those cases, right? But not hitting you all day long. I mean, sometimes it can be an all day messaging. I've seen that happen all day, Skypes or Zooms or Slack or whatever, like a messaging all day long. How do you work under that? I mean, you can't, and it's gotten worse over time in that way. So setting those boundaries with the other people, because if they don't know, how can they change their behavior too? They may say, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can work that out. Maybe they won't all react that way, but you have to try. If they don't know, they can't work with you.
Well,
and then the other thing is,
Chris, let me jump in here. If you've set that that email. Let's say you get that email. What I was thinking as you were talking about that is, you have in depending on the email that server that you use, you can, as you time block, you could probably say, hey, good morning. From 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., I've time blocked to work on some projects. If you're sending me an email and you get this response, know that I've received your email. I'll be more than happy to respond to it in the time that I have blocked off, which is, let's say 1 to 3. And you might even could put that in an out of, something like to an out of office
responder, out of office, exactly. Yeah.
To a reply like that. I've got to ask you this. I've got to ask you this, and forgive me for jumping in there. You're dinging a lot of things inside, and folks, I hope
it's actually good.
I hope this is dinging a lot of things in your brain as you're listening to Chris and you're listening to this conversation. Having written a book myself, I know the process and things like that. Was there a moment that during your book that you wrote something and it was that aha moment for you? It was a V8 moment for you. I had several of those. Take me through a moment in your book where you actually had a V8 moment for yourself and you're like, wow, I never realized this until I wrote it down.
Yeah, that's a good point, which is weird because you're writing it, right? So you got the words from somewhere. And for me, the book too was a confirmation because I respect people who use their own process, who eat their own dog food, or whatever analogy or metaphor you want to use. And I want to do
like
that
with eat your own dog food. Yeah,
eat your own dog food, right? If it's your dog food's so good,
yeah,
put your money where your mouth is.
Well, a lot of people have said when we get old, that's what we're going to end up doing, is because we've spent ourselves into oblivion. So you're not going to have anything left. You have to eat your own dog food anyway. So I'm not going to do that. But I love that.
Or these days, it's what's left on the shelves. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So the book was also proving that I could use these techniques and get a book done. Okay, because as you know. Finishing a book is an accomplishment, and it's not trivial. I mean, especially we've tried it. Maybe it doesn't seem like that to people, but I mean, doing it, like getting those words down, like time after time, and actually finishing it. I mean, I know people that work on a book for 10 years and maybe not finish. Right? I didn't want to do that. I wanted to prove that my time blocking and those kind of things would work, so I could carve out that time to myself, not get interrupted, and write some chapters and say, good, I did that for the day. Now move on and take care of the other things. Okay. Because life wants you to take care of those things. So it was good to get that confirmation in general that, okay, those principles were working. I think and it's cool that, like I said, even recently I've been getting confirmation that some of my things that were in the book, and I didn't make them all up myself. Some were based on my experience, some from other, people whose shoulders I stood on, but to get the confirmation that they were still useful, maybe more useful in the way times are getting crazy and changing. I would say the most surprising thing is how much doing the one thing, and I mentioned Gary Keller before, and there's other people like Tim Ferriss to talk about, and he was one of my biggest influences. And he talks about what would easy look like, because we have in our minds, and you kind of alluded to this before, we think we have to do these big, long to-do lists, and that's success, or that's accomplishment, is having all this complication. And so even while I was doing it, I'm like, I guess maybe there's some, hesitancy about, can you really do more, by doing less? And I really started to get that feeling. It's like, wow, yes, you can. I could feel that seeping in, like during the week, whereas before I might be kind of sitting there, okay, I'm going to start working now, and I'm just going to keep going until, I'll eat and spend time with my family and stuff, but I'm just going to keep going until I fall asleep and say, oh, wow, I didn't get these things done today. I got to jump on that tomorrow.
Yeah, it's the power through mentality, Chris. We're just conditioned to power through, right?
Yeah. So what was surprising for me was starting to feel that kind of sort of sense of relief or calmness that, okay, cool. I got the work done. By getting some important stuff done today, I feel better about it. I can relax a little bit and not feel like I'm, just tighten, a ball of kind of stress or, anxiety or whatever, trying to get all the stuff done, all the time. And that was a little bit surprising to me and definitely welcome to feel like, because knowing that you got some stuff done, some things that move the needle are important, then you can say, well, that's cool. Now I'm less annoyed by those distractions I'll deal with later. It's like, okay, I got some good stuff done. Yeah, I'll answer the emails. I'll deal with these little things. I don't care that, I've got a distraction or, flat tire or whatever it is, right? It's like, okay, well, I got good stuff done. I've got time. I don't need to worry every minute and hour of the day what I should be doing right now, what I should do next. So that was kind of my epiphany, I guess.
I love that. And that's the note that I wrote down was focusing on what actually got accomplished rather than what didn't, because you'll look at your to-do list and you go, oh man, I didn't get that done. Oh, I didn't get it. And you may have 20 things on your to-do list and you got 18 out of 20 done. It's like, that's 90%. That's really, really good. So I love that. I would be remiss. Let's step aside, take a quick break. I would be remiss if we did not save time for Chris's story. I want to be intentional about making sure we've got space and room for Chris to tell his story. You're going to be riveted. So just hang with us. Stay with us. My guest, Chris Lee, consultant, mindset coach, speaker, author of the book, Less is the New More. Come back and hear his powerful story in just a moment on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Hey everybody, Brian Sexton. I want to take a moment and tell you about my friend Harry Spate and his new book, Selling with Dignity. Harry has taken an age-old concept of sales and he's put a new twist to it, and I love the direction that he's taken with Selling with Dignity. And here's what's encouraging about Harry's book. Instead of viewing people as numbers and machines, salespeople are now given the tools and the encouragement to be dignified in their approach. Here's what Harry says. He says, selling is an honorable profession when it's done right. When sellers feel they're valuable and have integrity and respect, this opens the door for better conversations and eventually relationship. This book puts an end to sleazy sales tactics and proves why selling with dignity can be done, and it leads to massive success. And I couldn't agree more. Go to sellingwithdignity.com, get your copy today, and if you want Harry to sign it, he'll do that for you. Again, go to sellingwithdignity.com and pick up your copy today of the new book by Harry Spate, Selling with Dignity. And now let's get back to more great conversation here on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Chris, I'm going to try my hardest not to jump in, even though I want to ask you 18,000 questions around that, but I want you to go back as far as you want to. I may jump in with a couple of questions, but I want folks to hear your powerful story.
Thank you. Yeah, and I certainly, one of the things I do encourage everybody to think about is that they do have a story, and they don't often realize their story and how that might be compelling or inspirational to somebody else. So I've had some feedback, some small signs from the universe, if you will, that okay, this is the path you should be going on, helping to inspire people and so forth. But the big event and wake up call that I got was in 2008. My mother passed away pretty suddenly from a rare brain condition. And it was shocking for a couple reasons. I mean, losing a loved one or a parent or family member is hard for anyone. Yeah. But it was really shocking because she was as healthy as you and I are. And she had the genes in her side of family that she could have lived easily well into her 90s. And so I always thought, and I think a lot of us, that, she's barring a car crash or something, she's going to live a long time, maybe even outlive me. Okay. Depending on what kind of decisions I made in my life. And so it was it was really a wake-up call because she'd worked hard all her life. Both my parents did, and their family, their ancestors, and had a really, really good work ethic. And she put off things that I know she wanted to do, like traveling, because there was that, mindset of you work hard, you retire, you do some of those things, right? We know there's that approach is fraught with some challenges, but again, there was every reason to believe that everything would be cool and she'd have time to do that later. Well, she didn't. Okay. So things like, traveling and seeing things, she didn't get a chance to do. And so the wake up call for me was that I was heading down the same path. So I had creative things that I like to do. And one of them was playing the guitar and music that I did years ago. And over time, when I was working in corporate and so forth, that went to like zero. Okay, so I was going down the same path of things that I might want to do other than just, working the job, right? Weren't going to happen. Okay, so I made so that really, kind of shook me into action, and I said, okay, I can't go down that road. Life, especially these days, can be a multi-act play, and also there are just things I wanted to do. Impacts I wanted to maybe make. So I made a decision there that I needed to somehow figure out how to start doing that. And not necessarily overnight. You can't just, well, you could, I guess, decide to leave and go travel the world or live on the beach or something, right? But you don't have to do that. So I use the principles, and I started, really digging into that and saying, okay, how can I get things done? And so I used those ideas to just start doing some music. I had to relearn how to play guitar. And then I said, okay, well, maybe I'll do some singing. And then, I recorded some music, and I decided, well, okay, so I did that. Now let me go out and try singing in public. Okay. Well, I was used to being a speaker, and I was comfortable with that, but getting out, putting yourself out there in public and singing on a small stage is like a terrifying experience when you first start.
See, I don't know what that's like because, when I was 3 years old, my dad got me up and sang in church. So from the time I was a little kid, I had never, I guess, and you bring up a good point. For some people, it's natural. For me, it's like, no big deal. Let's get up there and do it. I've always done it. For you, it's a different thing. And for me, maybe something that you've always done, be like, piece of cake. For me, it'd be like, I don't know about that. And again, it's just perspective. And I want to jump back for a minute talking about losing a parent suddenly. I know exactly what that's like. I lost my dad suddenly. It was always like, well, dad's always going to be here, and you miss it. When you think about the epiphany, and you said, hey, when that happened, I realized that I needed to get some things done that I've always wanted to do. Was there a moment where you said, though, I've wanted to do this, but I don't know if I can? Because maybe, and Chris, I don't know if your mom was like my dad. My dad was the ultimate encourager. I felt like I could do anything because my dad's like, yeah, you can do it. Did you feel like that there were some things that you wanted to do, but were a little reticent to do? And how did you feel encouragement from your mom, even though your mom wasn't there? Was the encouragement for you of, she didn't get to do these things, so I'm going to take the ball and run with it? I hope I've asked that question correctly.
Yeah, and that's part of it too, of making, I guess I always felt like, I wanted to make an impact and make some difference, and everybody does that in a certain way. And I think that kind of changed, the definition of fulfillment or success maybe changed over generations. So for my grandparents, it may have been, having food on the table, right, during recessions and things like that. And for my parents, they encouraged all of us, but it was more like, getting a good job, providing for yourself, having a good house and all those things, right? So they weren't And then they were kind of entrepreneurs, but not explicitly. I mean, they were, business owners. They didn't necessarily like encourage, the getting out of your comfort zone and trying those kind of things. And certainly not with music. I mean, at the time, it would have been like, oh, well, no, you want to be a starving artist, or a broke musician. And by the way, I never tried to do that because I understand that I would be a starving artist or a broke musician.
Yeah, same here.
I did know that.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so in a way, so they encourage me in terms of their example of having a good work ethic and working hard. But I think what I had to learn for myself and what I've learned to teach others is to, how to get out of my comfort zone, as well as, all the mindset things. And, when I talk about mindset, for your listeners, sometimes the term is misused. Like, for example, on social media, I've seen many times somebody with their picture of their butt in spandex and hashtag, mindset is everything, or mindset matters. And, more power to them, but they're kind of talking about, motivation and discipline.
Yeah.
And when I talk about mindset, what I mean is, okay, let's say like, the Nike slogan, just do it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's motivational, but to me, mindset is figuring out why you're not doing it. Okay. And you may have reasons, things that are blocking you. And it kind of circles back to, kind of what you're alluding to, like the lessons or the things you have to unpack out of that is mindset is doing, to me, that inner work to figure out why you're not aligned with what you're doing, maybe, or what may be holding you back. So just do it is like the motivation, but then you need to understand, why you're not doing it, and then you learn how to solve it or how to heal from that place.
Well, and mindset is so powerful when you go through a situation where you lose someone suddenly. Like the way I saw things, the way I looked at things changed because, it was like, okay, this is now dumped in my lap, so to speak. And I have to think differently. I have to do, because, the person that I depended on at times when I needed advice or I needed counsel, they're gone, not here anymore. So I got to kind of figure it out for myself. Chris, I've got to ask you this real quick. Mm-hmm. Take me through another moment in your life where there was an obstacle that you had to overcome. What was the biggest lesson that you learned from it? And what was your mindset as you were going through it, coming through it, and going out the other side? Because again, the reason we do the Intentional Encourager podcast is everybody's got something that they've walked through. And there's that connecting moment with guest and audience where that person may be walking through something themselves that you've already gone through, right? And you've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, so to speak. And now right. you have that frame of reference. You have that mindset where you go, okay, I've already walked through this, so I know now what my mindset is if I have to walk through something similar again, or if someone asks me to consult or coach or advise them on that. Can you take me through another point in your life where that happened and the lesson you learned from it?
Sure. And I will say I could say that same lesson applied in a very similar way to a couple of different scenarios. I talked about the musical thing. And like I said, as a speaker, getting on stage, I was comfortable with that. But getting on stage and singing was very intimate because I was not just on stage, I was putting my music out there, which makes you very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. So that's one scenario. And the other is going from doing the kind of standard sort of, 9 to 5 to doing something, like this, doing the kind of coaching thing. And that brings in for a lot of people. And I was the same, they call me Imposter Syndrome. Am I good enough? Do I need to do more? So whether it's music or that, it's I feel like I'm not good enough yet. I need to practice more. I need to learn another thing. I need to take another course or, on and on, right? And so what I tell people, and I've even said this very recently, is that more training will not get you started. Getting started is the only thing that will get you started. So you have to, and again, I like to say, make a commitment to yourself, but be okay with taking that leap. And you can take small leaps. You don't have to do something crazy overnight, but trust that taking that leap will make you grow, because to your point, I think you don't learn or grow really from the easy times or the kind of mediocre times. You learn from the adversity. So certainly learning a loved one, but there's 1,000 different ways that adversity can hit you and make you have to grow. But that's kind of like an unplanned growth moment. There are the other times that I was just talking about where you have a desire, you want to make another impact, you want to do something new, but you can't pull the trigger, you're getting in your own way. So you need to do some prep, but then put yourself out there. You're very unlikely to be, you're never going to be perfect. You're unlikely to be even good when you start. That's okay. When you get started, that's when you will grow. You will not get started, and you won't grow really by trying to learn more stuff and do more, academic sort of analysis of what you're going to be.
Yeah. You beautifully took us from that, because the last as you know, the last question that I normally ask is, give me your biggest piece of intentional encouragement. Man, you just wrapped it up really nicely in just one big piece. And there was, as I was writing it down, I thought, man, we've just gone ahead and skipped to the intentional encouragement, which was great. I love how you just took us there, Chris, and that is so good. Let folks know how they can connect with you, how they can get the book, how they can get more of your resources.
Absolutely. So on social media or wherever, I am that Chris Lee, ThatChrislee. So that's me. I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn probably the most, but I'm on Facebook too. And my website is thatchrislee.com. So I did that. And that was intentional too. I went out and I had to search, what domains were available and who was using what. And that was the one I found, because there were a lot of Chris Lees, not surprisingly. That one was everywhere. So that Chris Lee. And you can find my book on Amazon. If you're interested in my music, you can search that too, like on Bandcamp or whatever. But if you're more interested in what I do, or more about me or my platform, or how we might work together, then just go look at any of those things: LinkedIn, Instagram, or thatchrislee.com, and let's have a conversation.
Thatchrislee.com. I love that. That is so good. There's like one dude there's two dudes out there named Brian Sexton. One used to be the play-by-play guy for the Jacksonville Jaguars. The other one was like the Michael Jordan of Irish dancing, like the Irish dancing stuff.
Right.
I am neither one of those guys. I'm neither. Chris Lee, this has been a great conversation. I have so enjoyed it. Again, go find the book,
too.
Less is the New More, on Amazon. Go to thatchrislee.com. Chris, thank you for joining me today on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And of course, the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. If you're not subscribed to the Intentional Encourager podcast, hit the subscribe button wherever you get podcasts so you don't miss an exciting episode where you can get encouraged and stay encouraged. And remember, anyone, anywhere, at any time, any place can be an intentional encourager.